thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Hello and good morning, and this is Carl Smith on the Friday morning break, welcoming you on this wet and drizzly week where we've had an awful lot of water flying about. But today we're going to discuss the SENCOs survival kit, or the way to survive in the crazy world of being a SENCO in the current climate.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Introducing Reading Solutions UK, home to Dreambox Reading Plus, the online reading development programme, improving outcomes for students and schools nationwide. Create stronger readers in your school from Key Stage 2 to beyond GCSE, using Reading Plus's evidence-based adaptive technology. Reading Plus accurately assesses your students' skills gaps and places them on a personalised learning pathway, built to accelerate their strengths and improve on their areas for development. You can try the programme with a free 4-week pilot today. Search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request your free pilot today.
How can you show your students the opportunities that await them? How can you fuel their aspirations and motivate them to achieve? Futurum Careers provides a wealth of stimulating resources aimed at encouraging 14 to 19-year-olds to pursue careers in STEM and SHAPE. We help you to show your students what they can aim for and how. From articles to activity sheets, animations to podcasts, all our resources align with Gatsby benchmarks and are free for you and your students to download. Visit futurumcareers.com and subscribe today. Futurum Careers, helping teachers to inspire the next generation.
Get set for the year ahead with the Bloomsbury Education Back to School sale. Save 30% on all Bloomsbury education books until 30th September. From the very best in research-led practice to trusted advice on inclusivity, behaviour and curriculum design, we've got something for everyone. Visit bloomsbury.com/B2S sale to shop now and save 30%. Bloomsbury Education, books for every step of your teaching journey.
Teachers, mark your calendars for BetUK 2025, the world's biggest EdTech event. Join over 30,000 educators at the Excel London from the 22nd to the 24th of January. Discover the latest EdTech innovations, network with peers and access hundreds of hours of CPD. Did we mention it's 100% free for educators? Whether you're looking for inspiration or practical tools to enhance your teaching, BET has it all. Don't miss this opportunity to shape the future of education. Register today at uk.betshow.com. That's uk.betshow.com.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Two linked stories feature on the BBC News website. The first is an in-depth piece on tuition fees and government funding for higher education, with 141 UK universities now calling for change. Whilst many universities have previously made comments on the funding crisis, the BBC Today programme says Universities UK is now saying that a rise in tuition fees and more government investment is needed so that the sector does not slide into decline. This comes as record numbers of home students begin courses this month, but the number of international students is down. About 40% of universities are expecting to return a budget deficit this year, according to the regulator, the Office for Students. Universities UK says that if investment in teaching students had kept up with inflation funding per student, it would be in the region of £12,000 to £13,000. Higher Education Policy Institute says it would be politically difficult to put up fees, but there needs to be a decision about funding. Changes to visa rules and a currency crash in Nigeria have reduced applications for students from abroad. Whilst the cost of living crisis means students now need about £18,000 a year to live on, but the maximum loan amount is £10,000. The full Today programme is available on BBC Sounds. Meanwhile, another story is the amount of debt graduates are leaving university with. The BBC focuses on those graduates who took out loans in England and Wales between 2012 and 2023, when interest rates hit 8%. The article tells the story of graduate Adam, who borrowed £44,000 and has paid back £7,000 since graduating 4 years ago, but now owes £54,000. Despite having a good job, his salary isn't even covering the interest on the debt, and the amount is going up, not down. This situation predominantly affects those on Plan 2 loans, with some graduates reporting that the repayments are making applying for mortgages difficult, and others viewing it as a tax on graduates. The Save the Student campaign group says it could, but shouldn't, put students off. Whichever way we look at it, it seems the issues of funding, tuition fees and student loans are something the government will need to tackle, although a Department for Education spokesperson acknowledged it's going to take time to get it right. In the world of online technology, something many young people use regularly, Instagram has said it is overhauling the way it works for teenagers. In a press release, it promised more built-in protections for young people and said it had added controls for parents. The new teen accounts have been introduced in the UK, as well as the US, Canada and Australia. This means privacy settings will be activated by default for all under 18s, including making content unviewable for people who don't follow them, and actively require approval for all new followers. Children aged 13 to 15 will only be able to adjust these settings by adding a parent or guardian to their account. The UK children's charity, the NSPCC, responded to Instagram's announcement by calling it a step in the right direction, but said it must also be backed up by proactive measures that prevent harmful content in the first place. Further details of this story can be found online. The Guardian reports on school uniforms in France. Uniforms have not been compulsory in state schools in France since 1968. They have made a return in one town to establish if they can reduce inequality and improve behaviour. The school uniform debate has long been a focus of discussion in the UK and has sometimes been seen as something of a polarising topic. In France, 700 pupils at 4 schools in Béziers are taking part in the scheme that the government says could be rolled out nationwide, if it is successful. A French government minister said, "We would like to see if wearing a uniform can create tranquility in classrooms, because we know you learn better in a peaceful environment." The mayor of Béziers said uniforms would help combat bullying, but a teachers' union said it was a superficial response to a fundamental problem and would in no way help resolve troubles. Some parents have objected to the uniform, saying that public schools should not ape the worst excesses of private schools. This was written in an open letter of protest. Uniforms were first introduced in France in 1802 by Napoleon, but have not been compulsory since 1968. Whatever the outcome of the pilot, it seems clear that the topic of uniform is a hot one. Finally, BBC Leicester covers the story of Billy, the emotional support tortoise, who can be found working in a Leicestershire school. Billy, aged 11, wanders the corridors and has a heart-shaped balloon attached to his shell so students can see him coming. He's described as a calming presence who works in the school's learning support department, helping students who are feeling overwhelmed. Billy has his own lanyard carrying his photo and his official title. He works hard to support pupils by being lovely, fun and cute. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
So, thank you. And we were quickly going to the ads there to start with, but now I want to talk about the main issue this morning, which is how to survive and thrive as a SENCO in the modern world. And we will be joined by Mary Mindham, a successful SENCO and all-round good egg, to find out what all the answers are. So yet again, SEND has been debated in Parliament, and it seems everybody has a view. Nobody has a solution, but everybody does have an opinion. One thing everybody agrees on is that the current system is broken and things have got a lot worse over the last decade. I think we can all agree on that. Fixing it has proved to be quite a challenge, though. Perhaps it can't be fixed. Perhaps it can. But in the meantime, there are people on the front line doing the best they can, and it's not always a barrel of laughs, I think it's fair to say. Yet not only do some SENCOs survive, but in fact, as we'll be seeing, they thrive. And the question is how they do this, despite all the difficult situations that the world has to throw at them. Not only do they carry on, but they carry on caring, listening, helping, even smiling, making the impossible possible and feeling proud of what they do. But how do they do it? What gift do they possess? And what survival strategies do they employ? This is the subject of today's show, and I'm delighted to be joined by a successful secondary SENCO mother, stress, languages teacher, double stress, an all-round good egg, triple stress, Mary Mindham, who's going to tell us all the answers. Good morning, Mary.
Morning. I'm a bit worried that you think I have all the answers, but no pressure there.
No pressure whatsoever, absolutely. But let's face it, there are plenty of answers to tell. Let's just set a bit of context. So in January 2007, there were 1.6 million, approximately 1.6 million pupils with special educational needs in England. The total then increased gradually, reaching 1.7 million in 2010, before actually declining again until 2016, when it stood at 1.2 million. Since then, the number of pupils with SEN has increased every year, so that by January of this year, it was back to 1.7 million. Where things have really changed is in the proportion of those pupils with statements, as they used to be called, or now education and healthcare plans, as they're called. Between 2007 and 2017, the figure remained broadly stable. It's around 2.8% of pupils in each year were on an EHC plan. But since then, it has climbed to nearly 5%, which works out at about 500,000 children and young people currently in England who have one of these plans. That's a lot of plans. And what's more, it takes a lot longer to apply and get one of these plans agreed. Sort of an average of around 8 months in most cases. And a lot can happen in 8 months, especially to the life of a young person with special educational needs or disabilities. So in 2019, the government announced a major review of SEND. And in 2022, a green paper was published, followed by the SEND Improvement Plan in 2023. Happy days, except nothing has actually happened in the meantime. Meanwhile, SENCOs have had to keep on doing what SENCOs do. And, well, it can all be a bit much at times. So, Mary, how do you survive?
Well, it's not a cheery backdrop you've just set there, is it? I mean,
we're going to cheer them up. We're going to cheer them up.
I think it's fair to say if you want to be a SENCO, you've got to have a bit of fire in your belly. You're going to have to want to take on the fight a little bit because of all those parts of the system that are just so difficult at the minute. But there are some things I think people in the job can do to help themselves and to protect themselves, because this job is huge. It is massive, but also it's a really privileged role as well. So there are benefits to it. There are positives, and I think probably the most important advice I was given as a new SENCO, when everything is overwhelming, when that to-do list is growing, when you don't know who to contact about the next problem, was to remember that you are the SENCO, not the SENDO. You don't have to do everything yourself.
I love that. So just let's say that again. So you're the SENCO and not the
SENDO. There is no way one person in a secondary school can do absolutely everything that SEND students need. So our jobs as SENCOs is to be the coordinator of that, to have that strategic oversight of everything. You can't be in every meeting, you can't be in every conversation, but having the proper systems in place and having that strategic oversight will impact all of the SEND students in school.
Yeah. So in effect, you've got to start on the basis, and this is true of pretty well any leadership position, that you are not the hero of the story. You are not the saviour. You are not the person that is going to, off your own bat, be able to change and manage everything. You are a coordinator with lots of other people who are there to help and have expertise and want to help, I dare say. In fact, if they don't feel like they're part of the solution, then they would feel as though they were not, really valued. So SENCO, not SENDO, I reckon is sounds to me like a really good phrase to keep in your mind. But I mean, that's all very well, but how difficult is that in practice, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Some days this job is absolutely consuming, and the emails feel like they never stop, or there are so many children to help. But I think it's in those times especially you have to acknowledge you don't have a magic wand. You can't fix the things in the system beyond your control.
No.
And it is when you're starting out learning the art of delegation and figuring out which of those things that have come in need to happen now and which ones can wait just a little bit longer, because we always have to prioritise. There's always multiple calls on our time.
But when you start in a job, Mary, and here obviously we're talking specifically to, relatively new SENCOs in post. When you start in the job, it can seem like everything's a priority. So how do you go about figuring out a way through that?
So I think I would start by, you've got to look at the really kind of the boring stuff, the procedural stuff, the making sure you've got systems in place. Then you've got to work on building relationships. And then you've got to look after yourself as well. So kind of 3 really broad areas. But I think the best thing to do at the beginning is learn the strengths of your team. Learn what skills and experience there already are in the building. Because you could be coming in as a new leader with members of staff who've been in this game much longer than you and already know some of those answers you're looking for. I think also you've got to see when you come into a new school the strengths that there already are and acknowledge those, because sometimes teachers are not great at acknowledging what they do well. I think we've had, as teachers generally, so many years of we must do better every year, we must do better, we must do better.
Oh, heaven's sake, yeah, absolutely. Relentless improvement, no matter how...
You've met your targets, do better next year.
What can we do now? Well, how about saying good is good enough, actually, at the moment? But yeah,
and
sure.
I think with SEN specifically, there isn't much teacher training about it, usually.
No.
When people qualify, people are trying to do their best, but may not have the knowledge. But actually, a lot of what they're doing, a lot of what is good teaching is good for everybody in the room. And I think acknowledging that with staff is a really powerful thing to do, because we're not in the classroom, we're not in every lesson. It's these teachers that have to actually deliver these reasonable adjustments and things that we need to happen for these children. So it's really, really important to get them on board, but also to acknowledge what they're already doing. And I
was just going to say that people go into a new position thinking that they've got to prove themselves, but they forget and obviously, yes, they do have to show what they can do, but they forget that actually there are almost always lots of people around who are just hoping for an opportunity to contribute to that solution. And you're saying, look, give them a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a really powerful thing as a SENCO I can do quite often is acknowledge I don't have the answers, or I don't have a magic wand to a situation, but I can be a new set of eyes on a situation. I can offer suggestions. And if I can't have those answers within me, I might know more people in the system than teachers do to find those answers.
Yeah.
If that's going out to outside professionals or outside agencies, trying to get different supports in place. So
Sure.
There's no way one person can know it all or do it all.
No. Especially when the system's as broken. And I know sometimes people say we shouldn't use that phrase because it actually encourages a negative view of it. But let's be honest, it feels broken to anybody working in it. But in this situation that we're faced with, you've got to really remind yourself, because we're all blamed in education, aren't we, for things which are largely way beyond our your control, and yet because we're the people that the parents will interact with on a day-to-day basis, it's got to be us, hasn't it, that takes their ira, and the people that are actually I guess responsible for making decisions on a wider level are not there, and so they can't vent their spleen, as it were, to those people.
Absolutely. We are the only accessible people sometimes in these systems to these families. So
how do you square that circle? Sorry, Mary, I was just going to say, how do you square the circle of being accessible? How accessible is the right balance, do you think?
Absolutely. I think anyone working in education needs to set their boundaries and prioritise their own life as well, to maintain that balance. But I think in the relationships with families, it's about being able to be honest with them. It's about genuinely having the capacity to listen and to hear them, because they are oftentimes in absolute crisis. And probably the worst things we could do as SENCOs is make promises we can't keep. So the honesty, although the conversation may not be what they want, it's probably more realistic sometimes. But I think once you've had those conversations at the beginning, if you've actually been a person that they felt has listened to them, that helps as your relationship goes on, because a relationship with a SENCO in a school, there is a lot more contact than there is with a normal classroom teacher, especially in secondary school. There are some families I might speak to 3-4 times a day. There might be some that I might speak to every couple of weeks, but them knowing that they have a contact in school, that they don't have to explain the situation again to somebody else, I think is really, really important. But that then can add one of the difficulties of, again, does this go against my priority? I might have a lot of statutory work that I have to get done to deadlines, but I've got a family in crisis. And those crunch points, always choose the family, because if you've built those relationships with caseworkers and local authorities, most of the time I found there has been that enough wiggle room to say, look, this happened today. I'm going to be a day late on your statutory paperwork.
Sure.
Because honestly, they're usually a lot later themselves with their own statutory paperwork. So
that's right. Yeah, absolutely.
When you're waiting months for an EHCP to be updated after your meeting, sometimes you can think, why did I have to bust my gut and get that done in 15 days for you? So I think, sometimes you can have all the best system and the sort of best planning in your mind of what you're going to do with your day. And it goes completely awry, and you have to put other needs first that have emerged.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Play the game in front of you to a degree. The people that are there that at that moment have to, need you. for whatever reason, they're the people that you've got to give your attention to. But it can be really hard. And I think I love that bit of advice you just gave about saying to people in advance, look, I'm not going to be able to deliver this on time. I'm going to tell you now, this at the moment is going to have to wait 24 hours, or even it's going to have to wait more than that, because I've got something here that needs my immediate attention, and that's got to take priority. And a bit of honesty with people. It's a bit like, go back to uni, and looking at the situation, saying, I need an extension. I'm not going to get this essay done in the next couple of hours. I need to go to somebody and explain it. As long as you don't keep doing it for everything, I think people are often, and you said that you're giving them permission to accept the things that they're not getting in on time as well, because we're not perfect, and that's
no, and I think that's really important. We have to work together. Your local authority caseworkers are working in a system that is just as broken as you are. We're just on opposite ends of the paperwork sometimes. And the difficulty with being the SENCO is that you have much more of the contact with those families, with those children, and you're probably much more aware of what the crisis is or how emergent it is. Whereas caseworkers and local authorities can feel a bit more removed from that. So I think one of the really important things to do when you're a new SENCO is building relationships. And if you can have those honest conversations with caseworkers, it does help, because there will be things that happen. You'll get a plan come through and it just doesn't make sense to you. You don't understand what one of the provisions is. You've never heard of it. You've never done that before. No. If you've got honest relationships with people, you can just ring them up and actually find out what you need to, so you can give an honest response to that consult. Or I've got some good working relationships with some of our caseworkers. Sometimes they are working under time pressure. They've made mistakes in their work too.
Sure.
And you can just ring them up and say, I don't think you meant to write this, or I think that might be about a different child, or, and you can just get it fixed. It doesn't have to be adversarial all the time.
No.
So I think those are really important people to build relationships with, but you have to build relationships in your school. You cannot be a SENCO who is hidden away in an office and never getting away from the paperwork, never going and seeing what else is going on.
No, and if you do that, I mean, I think with all leadership positions in schools, if you do that, you lack credibility. People need to see people that are in charge or in positions of authority walking the walk, not just talking the talk, as it were. They've got to be in the difficult places. They've got to be, having difficult conversations, the kind of things that other people need help and assistance with. They've got to be in there doing those, because if they're not going to have credibility. And I do think in this world where so much, with large multi-academy trusts and, accountability to layers above the school, as it were, which often happens, that can be really hard, because the reality is, as far as a child is concerned, or a parent is concerned, authority stops with the people that are in the school. That they're the people that are making the decisions. They're the people that matter. So it's important that people on the ground are able to make those decisions, but also are seen to be, rolling their sleeves up and getting down there and really getting into the nitty gritty of the hard work on things. What about parents, Mary? Parents have been the subject of so much discussion in education circles for, quite a few years now, but certainly since the pandemic, much more so, and probably in the area of SEND, more so again. So, there'll be parents who are completely unreasonable. There will be parents who see their role as adversarial. They see the SENCO or the school as an enemy, as somebody that they have to consistently pick up on, as though schools and SENCOs are somehow trying to avoid providing their child with what their child needs, ducking the issues and so on. So we get that a lot in education. So what advice do you give to SENCOs to stay, happy, sane, and thriving? Dare I say, with that?
I think the first thing is try not to take things personally, and that can be difficult. But if you take a step back, there's so much on social media that is pushing parents in some ways to have that relationship with schools and with us. So much content going around of false information about how much money there is allocated to their child, and
Oh gosh, yeah.
how are we spending that? And actually you're thinking, crikey, if only you knew what the gas bill was on this place.
Absolutely, yeah.
If only you knew that, how much photocopying costs. No, we don't have this amount of money that we are sat on refusing to help your child with. But I think ultimately you have to come from a place of families and parents often need our help, and we're the only people they can get to for that. And I think quite oftentimes if you're a SEN parent, by the time a child's needs have been recognised, you probably have had to fight quite a lot. Some schools may have not seen any issues. Some schools may have said it's only affecting at home, so we're not going to action anything. I think a lot of parents feel blamed a lot of the time by schools. And if you've had those negative interactions with a previous school, if you've had to fight for your child to be recognised, it's no wonder that they're starting from that wanting to fight point. So all you can do is try and be as human as you can with them. Don't take it personally, but be honest about the realities of the situation. So if they are coming to you with misinformation, give them the correct information. Maybe you can't offer whatever they're asking for, but could you offer something different instead? And I think one of the biggest things of winning parents over when they are trapped sometimes in huge waiting lists to get their child's needs recognised is saying, I don't need that piece of paper. I don't need the diagnosis. What is this child struggling with? And what can we do to help them? So I think sometimes schools having a more open approach can take a little while for parents to trust. Sometimes you'll have very difficult interactions with parents, and a normal school day happens, and by the time you've got to the end of the day, you get home and you think, I didn't email that person back. And you probably know you've done that relationship some damage. So it's about the next day coming in and saying, I'm really sorry, I didn't get to this, but then addressing it. And so much of this is about time management, the whole job. The to-do list is never going to be empty. But I think the only way to help improve relationships with parents is working with those children and demonstrating time and again that you're here to help. But crikey, can that be difficult sometimes?
Yeah, and I think we have to accept that too, don't we? We have to accept the fact that we're really not perfect. Yes, of course we all want to do a great job, and we have high standards of ourselves, and that's a good thing. But the reality is we're not perfect. We will make mistakes. That's inevitable. That's human. And the sooner we can accept that and not beat ourselves up when we do make mistakes, the more likely we are to say sane and positive and cheerful in the job, because it is extremely difficult at times. And at times, let me put this to you, Mary, at times parents go further and actually putting formal complaints. and you know you've done your best, but they put in a formal complaint, and it's about something the system isn't delivering, but you are the person that's blamed for not. So how do you respond to that? Because that can be really quite upsetting for somebody.
Yeah, of course it can, because I don't believe that there is a single person in the job of SENCO who does this because it's a job or because they don't care. I think by any time it's got to the point of a complaint going in, you have to then, it's almost just take a step back, and you have to be able to trust the people around you in school. You have to be able to trust that your leadership team, your head, your governors will treat this fairly. They will look at this. You cannot be held to account for things beyond your control. So if you are able to demonstrate what you did for that child or what you were able to do for them, that's all you can do. You have to sort of take the emotion out of it, put a rational case forward of these are the facts. And I think if you are established in a school, if people already know those things about you, it becomes easier.
Yeah.
But you are left in that moment of feeling, oh, am I going to be believed? Is this me? Have I missed something? So, and I think sometimes when a complaint comes in, sometimes we just want to be absolutely, no, we've done nothing wrong. There's nothing we could improve. There's probably often something in that situation we could take could we have done that differently? Could we do this better next time? Is there a new system we need? So I think going into it as open as you can, but that is much easier to do if you've got the support of the people in school around you.
Yeah, I think that's critical. And of course, that isn't something that's entirely in anybody's control in a school. But, that goes back to the point. It's important that you find yourself or choose to work in places where you have supported colleagues.
Absolutely.
If you don't, then start looking at other opportunities is probably the best advice you can give somebody, because there are some people, schools are no different to the rest of the world. There are some people who are not empathetic, they are not supportive, or likely to back their staff in certain situations when they need their support. And if that's the case, then it's best not to hang around. Probably is what certainly my advice on it. Listen, Mary, we're going to go to the news now and find out what's going on in the wider world, and then we'll be back shortly for the next part of our SENCO Survival Kit.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Introducing Reading Solutions UK. Home to Dreambox Reading Plus, the online reading development programme, improving outcomes for students and schools nationwide. Create stronger readers in your school from Key Stage 2 to beyond GCSE, using Reading Plus's evidence-based adaptive technology. Reading Plus accurately assesses your students' skills gaps and places them on a personalised learning pathway, built to accelerate their strengths and improve on their areas for development. You can try the program with a free 4-week pilot today. Search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request your free pilot today.
How can you show your students the opportunities that await them? How can you fuel their aspirations and motivate them to achieve? Future Careers provides a wealth of stimulating resources aimed at encouraging 14 to 19-year-olds to pursue careers in STEM and SHAPE. We help you to show your students what they can aim for and how. From articles to activity sheets, animations to podcasts, all our resources align with Gatsby benchmarks and are free for you and your students to download. Visit futurecareers.com and subscribe today. Future and Careers, helping teachers to inspire the next generation.
Get set for the year ahead with the Bloomsbury Education Back to School sale. Save 30% on all Bloomsbury education books until 30th September. From the very best in research-led practice to trusted advice on inclusivity, behaviour and curriculum design, we've got something for everyone. Visit bloomsbury.com/B2S sale to shop now and save 30%. Bloomsbury Education, books for every step of your teaching journey.
Teachers, mark your calendars for BetUK 2025, the world's biggest EdTech event. Join over 30,000 educators at the Excel London from the 22nd to the 24th of January. Discover the latest EdTech innovations, network with peers and access hundreds of hours of CPD. Did we mention it's 100% free for educators? Whether you're looking for inspiration or practical tools to enhance your teaching, BET has it all. Don't miss this opportunity to shape the future of education. Register today at uk.betshow.com. That's uk.betshow.com.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Two linked stories feature on the BBC News website. The first is an in-depth piece on tuition fees and government funding for higher education, with 141 UK universities now calling for change. Whilst many universities have previously made comments on the funding crisis, the BBC Today programme says Universities UK is now saying that a rise in tuition fees and more government investment is needed so that the sector does not slide into decline. This comes as record numbers of home students begin courses this month, but the number of international students is down. About 40% of universities are expecting to return a budget deficit this year, according to the regulator, the Office for Students. Universities UK says that if investment in teaching students had kept up with inflation funding per student, it would be in the region of £12,000 to £13,000. Higher Education Policy Institute says it would be politically difficult to put up fees, but there needs to be a decision about funding. Changes to visa rules and a currency crash in Nigeria have reduced applications for students from abroad, whilst the cost of living crisis means students now need about £18,000 a year to live on, but the maximum loan amount is £10,000. The full Today programme is available on BBC Sounds. Meanwhile, another story is the amount of debt graduates are leaving university with. The BBC focuses on those graduates who took out loans in England and Wales between 2012 and 2023, when interest rates hit 8%. The article tells the story of graduate Adam, who borrowed £44,000 and has paid back £7,000 since graduating 4 years ago, but now owes £54,000. Despite having a good job, his salary isn't even covering the interest on the debt, and the amount is going up, not down. This situation predominantly affects those on Plan 2 loans, with some graduates reporting that the repayments are making applying for mortgages difficult, and others viewing it as a tax on graduates. The Save the Student campaign group says it could, but shouldn't, put students off. Whichever way we look at it, it seems the issues of funding, tuition fees and student loans are something the government will need to tackle, although a Department for Education spokesperson acknowledged it's going to take time to get it right. In the world of online technology, something many young people use regularly, Instagram has said it is overhauling the way it works for teenagers. In a press release, it promised more built-in protections for young people and said it had added controls for parents. The new teen accounts have been introduced in the UK, as well as the US, Canada and Australia. This means privacy settings will be activated by default for all under 18s, including making content unviewable for people who don't follow them, and actively require approval for all new followers. Children aged 13 to 15 will only be able to adjust these settings by adding a parent or guardian to their account. The UK children's charity, the NSPCC, responded to Instagram's announcement by calling it a step in the right direction, but said it must also be backed up by proactive measures that prevent harmful content in the first place. Further details of this story can be found online. The Guardian reports on school uniforms in France. Uniforms have not been compulsory in state schools in France since 1968. They have made a return in one town to establish if they can reduce inequality and improve behaviour. The school uniform debate has long been a focus of discussion in the UK and has sometimes been seen as something of a polarising topic. In France, 700 pupils at 4 schools in Béziers are taking part in the scheme that the government says could be rolled out nationwide, if it is successful. A French government minister said, "We would like to see if wearing a uniform can create tranquility in classrooms, because we know you learn better in a peaceful environment." The mayor of Béziers said uniforms would help combat bullying, but a teachers' union said it was a superficial response to a fundamental problem and would in no way help resolve troubles. Some parents have objected to the uniform, saying that public schools should not ape the worst excesses of private schools. This was written in an open letter of protest. Uniforms were first introduced in France in 1802 by Napoleon, but have not been compulsory since 1968. Whatever the outcome of the pilot, it seems clear that the topic of uniform is a hot one. Finally, BBC Leicester covers the story of Billy, the emotional support tortoise, who can be found working in a Leicestershire school. Billy, aged 11, wanders the corridors and has a heart-shaped balloon attached to his shell so students can see him coming. He's described as a calming presence who works in the school's learning support department, helping students who are feeling overwhelmed. Billy has his own lanyard carrying his photo and his official title. He works hard to support pupils by being lovely, fun and cute. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
Well,
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.
well, welcome back to the second half of our survival kit for SENCOs, and welcome back to our guest, Mary Mindham, the ever cheerful Mary Mindham, who is our source of inspiration and lightness in what have been quite challenging times. So, are things getting better, Mary?
Well, it depends what day it is, doesn't it? I just love the idea of a support tortoise. I mean, in the news, that was brilliant. I think that's one of the great things about being a SENCO. If you've got an idea that might help a student, you're in a position to try and make that happen. And I've never thought of a support tortoise before, but now I am. I just love it. He had a lanyard, he had a balloon so people knew where he was coming. I think I'm going to be putting a plan to my SLT later on that one.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think, you call me ever cheerful, and I think I'm not. No. But you've got to try, haven't you? Because actually we're in a really privileged position, and there are so many moments of joy when you work so closely with young people, when you are somebody who's maybe helped school feel a safer place for somebody, when a child who is practically non-verbal decides to say something to you, when someone shares with you their hobby, moments in the day of lightness are there. We've just got to try and hold on to them sometimes. And I think in the days where those moments seem a bit rarer, one of the most important things we can do for ourselves is make sure we've got a network. Yeah. So I said earlier, we've got to acknowledge we don't have all the answers. And sometimes if a problem comes up and you don't have the answer, that can be quite disheartening in this role. But there is so much out there, so many communities out there, especially online, because often in schools, SENCOs are the only one of us in school. Nobody else knows this job. We're a singular point of failure, I think they call it in business. We're the only people in the buildings holding this knowledge. Yeah. But sometimes when our knowledge is lacking, we can reach out to others in our role in other places. But beyond that, you've got to find people in your school building who will cheer you up when you're having a hard day, where you can go and have those conversations, and you're not the SENCO. You're not the person who's meant to have the answers. You're just somebody who's going to go and hide in someone's office and pretend to have a business chat, when actually what you're doing is recharging your batteries so you can go out there and do the best job for those children again. I think so much is about finding support for yourself in the building, but also finding those professionals outside of your building to reach out to too.
Very, very wise words, and that's so true. I welcome listeners to calling with their thoughts on how they survive and thrive as a SENCO, because so much of the internal dialogue, I think, can be negative, and what you're doing is asking people to reframe some of that. I think you sometimes don't get the thanks that you believe you deserve for doing something, to the very best of your ability. And you need to thank yourself. I know it sounds a little bit peculiar, but you need to say, actually, well done to me. I did that, and I did that in all great faith, good faith, and with integrity. And I worked hard at it, and I did the best that I could in that situation at that moment. And therefore, while I might reflect and think of things that I could do differently, I feel I deserve to be thanked for that. And you don't expect it always from other people, but you can get you can thank yourself, and I think that's psychologically that's a good thing to do. You're an assistant principal, aren't you, Mary? So you're on senior team.
Yeah.
So what's it like being a SENCO on senior team, and do you recommend it, or is that a burden that you could do without?
Well, I think it's absolutely vital. I think if SEN is going to have the profile it needs in a school, especially given the rising level of need that we are seeing coming up from primaries, I'm not sure how I could do this job without being on SLT. And I think, it helps raise the profile of SEN. It helps me make sure initiatives I need for SEN children can happen. It also allows me the perspective I need when I've got the overall picture of really complex situations sometimes in school, because naturally different members of SLT will have different priorities and different focuses, and sometimes they can clash. But actually, if you're in those wider discussions, you can appreciate maybe why some things that you suggest are taken on and some things aren't. And if you're not in the room having that conversation and you just get told no, it could be pretty easy to start thinking, oh, they don't want to help my kids. They don't want to help me. And it's not about that. It's about, we have to, in a school, balance so many priorities. So, I mean, on some days, being on SLT is no fun at all. It's absolutely extra work, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got no teaching staff in today, and XYZ is happening, and you need to be out there doing it. And you're thinking, I've got this massive to-do list sat on my desk. So, some days you think, I wish I wasn't, but I think it's really, really vital. And I think it was probably one of the most positive things in the latest, I say latest, it seems a long time ago now, governmental green paper saying that SENCOs should be on SLT. And I think
they did,
generally, as a wider discussion, mainstream schools are going to have to look at how we can become a broader church, how we can help more students, because we have a rising profile of need. We cannot just carry on in this system that's so broken and the only way as a SENCO you can be part of those conversations is being on SLT and saying, can we look at our curriculum? Can we try this wacky idea I've got? You know, can we pull in other people to help us? Because if not, we are going to be, I think we will struggle more to meet that rising need that's coming.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I do think it is really, really helpful, both for the SENCO and for the other members of the senior team, and therefore the school, that the SENCO is right at the heart of decision making and able to express views which might be contrary to other people. And that's important too, because I think in any functioning senior leadership team, there have to be disagreements. If your senior team is simply a vehicle for whatever the head thinks, then it's just going to miss so much, and you're not using the expertise that, as you say, a SENCO has got that no one else in the building has got. And it's really good, I think, when that voice is heard at the very top. So, Mary, what's a typical day like as a SENCO?
There's no such thing. There's no such thing. They're
I knew
all
you'd
so
say
different.
that. I knew
They're
you'd
all
say
different.
that.
So you could have a day, if I'm not teaching, because I still have a teaching timetable, if I have one of my days where I'm not teaching, I might have a really peaceful day where I can just do my annual review paperwork and put some applications in for funding and go home and think, I've done an office job today.
Yeah.
And some days I'll walk through the door, and before I can get into my room, I've had to deal with 3 or 4 different things.
When you get stopped in the car park, you actually just park in your car.
Like
somebody
happened
comes
this
up to you.
morning. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think, again, that sometimes is you are stopped because teachers or staff or parents, for them, they need an answer now. Something is very, urgent for them. And I think you just have to kind of come in with a flexible attitude of, okay, I'll do the other things later. But yeah, not so much as a typical day, I would say. I think like anyone in education, my emails probably drive me mad. I think, 200
How
a day.
How many do you have? How many?
I reckon
emails?
200 a day is usual.
Yeah. We could have a whole comedy sketch just based around how many emails you have. Well, 200, you're lucky. I have 450 emails a day. 450, yeah, nothing at all.
Yes.
And it goes on. Yeah.
And that, that can become a bit overwhelming if you're looking at them all the time. So I don't always manage it, but I do try not to respond every time that little annoying ping comes through.
Yeah.
And
presumably you don't set notifications on your phone.
Oh, absolutely not. When I'm at home, I'm at home. So yes, as SENCOs, we are in a very different position to other teachers in that we do need to be contactable in holidays, and there is statutory work that happens in those times. But if you take control of that, if you're choosing when you're looking, it doesn't have to take over the whole of your time off, because having that gap, having that distance from work is probably one of the reasons you can come back and keep going. So absolutely no notifications on my phone. I think I would go absolutely insane if I did that.
Never check your email or your notifications on a Sunday evening. That's absolutely fatal.
Yeah, you don't want to get Sunday dreads just because you've opened the wrong email on your phone. No. So I think those boundaries are really, really important. And sometimes you've got to accept you can only do what you can do in the hours you've been given. So a lot of our primary colleagues are not in the fortunate situation I am, where most of my time is being a SENCO. Some people I know in primary schools have an afternoon a week to be a SENCO.
Heavens.
And I'm thinking, I cannot do this with a very, very small teaching timetable. How on earth are you doing this with that amount of time? So we've just got to try and be kind to ourselves. We are kind to other people, we give people grace all throughout our day, with the people we work with the agencies we work with the families who are coming in at us hot and angry, but quite often we can be tough on ourselves. So we are trying to do superhuman things, but we've got to remember we're only human. And I think if you can say to yourself, I'm okay that my to-do list isn't going to be done. It's never going to be clear.
No.
But have I done the most critical things? As long as it's not a disaster that something else isn't done today, or a child is not in danger because I haven't done something today, then that is okay.
Sure, because there's the old adage, we all make mistakes, said nobody that jumped out of an aeroplane. Because obviously there are some things that you absolutely have to get right, but they are few and far between. And if there is a situation like that, then you just need to be very aware of that, obviously. But apart from that, the vast majority of things are not like that. What about teaching assistants? If you can get one, which of course is the first thing, because they're not exactly queuing up at the moment for the post of teaching assistant. So what advice do you have for working successfully with your team of teaching assistants?
Oh, crikey. I mean, some days you think, if only I could go out onto the street and just capture a human body because my timetable is so empty. We're really lucky. We've got a very big team. And I think if you've got the funding for a team, it then becomes the problem of recruiting. And we can't fix the rubbish pay. We can't fix those things. But I think anyone who works as a TA, very, very similar to anyone who works as a SENCO, is here because they want to. They want to do this job. They want to be helping these young people. But it's about finding out what previous experiences they've got and making the most of those. So people may have worked in industry, people may have worked in all sorts of different places and industries that they can bring things to the team. I think it's about making sure you've got proper CPD for your team, because the wages we pay, we cannot expect someone to come in ready-made knowing what they're doing.
No.
So we have to know what research tells us makes impactful the work of a TA. I worked in a school once where the argument was, well, I've read some research that a laptop is just as helpful as a TA, so I'm getting rid of the TAs.
Goodness me.
That was rather disheartening. But there is research that an unguided TA, without the training, without knowing what to do, actually isn't very impactful.
Yeah, there was some about 10 years ago, EEF stuff, education endowment,
but
that
they
I
also
think
did all the work of how they
enough.
can be impactful.
Yeah.
And the work that these people do with some of our young people, our most vulnerable young people, when they make that connection, when they know someone's there to support them, then you couldn't replace that person with anybody else in the world in that moment for that child sometimes, because it is about relationship building. But it is important that they feel supported and they got someone to come to when they're unsure of things. But if you've got an established team, they can train new people. And it's about getting your team to engage in the other training. So some of mine do level 2, level 3 understanding autism, and that might then be their specialism within the team. Some of mine will focus very much on literacy interventions. Some are trained as ELSAs. So I think huge amounts of things they can do and have huge impact, but it is about making the most of their previous experiences and what they want to do. And if we could find more of them and employ more of them, I think every school would be better.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. They are precious people, and it is really important that those who are in positions of power understand that, because there is this tendency to think, oh, well, they just sort of help us, or something, and nothing could be further from the truth. For many young people with SEND, they are the single most important person in their daily lives, and to just simply see them as a kind of resource that can be used maybe to push achievement up or not push it up, it is to completely miss the point. There's so much more that's involved in the role, and good teaching assistants are like gold dust, and hold on to them is all I can say. Hold on to them the best you can. I think the history of anybody you're working with, knowing a little bit about their history in the place that they're working, knowing a little bit about the story, their experiences, which have led them to the place they're currently in. I think that also helps, because you can go in and you can find people are hostile, or you can find people are withdrawn or resentful, and it's, you've got to at some point get to know why that person has that view, why they've got there, and sometimes you can sort that out, resolve that. Sometimes you can't, but at least if you know, it helps you to understand a little bit more what's actually going on. So, Mary, you've got 2 minutes. Can you sum up how to survive and thrive and go into the weekend as a SENCO with a happy smile on your face and a cheery air?
Remember, you cannot do it all. You can coordinate, but not do everything. Remember, don't let your emails control your life. Make your timetable and try and stick to it. And allow yourself to be flexible to meet those needs of our families as they come through the door. Whilst remembering you can't do it all, and if the worst comes to the worst, find those people in the building who will pick you up so that you'll walk back through and give it another go tomorrow.
And they are there. They really
Absolutely.
are there. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you, Mary. We could talk for so much longer. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we've only just got started, really. But I'm sure you've inspired lots and lots of people working in this.
Well, I'm off to go and look at tortoises to help students. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, me too. I'm down the pet shop now. So thank you so much for listening, everybody. Hope you can join us again in a couple of weeks. This is Teachers Talk Radio. My name's Carl Smith, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you, Mary, today. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.